The moment I found out about my wife's affair was like a punch to the gut, a sudden, disorienting blow that left me gasping for breath. It happened on a Tuesday evening just a few days after our son's birthday party. I had been scrolling through my phone, absent-mindedly checking social media, when I stumbled upon a photo that stopped me cold. It was a picture of my wife, laughing and leaning against a man in a sequined vest, a children's party magician. He was grinning like a Cheshire cat, and in that moment I felt my heart drop. I clicked on the image and it opened up a whole gallery of pictures from the party. There she was again, this time with her arm draped around the magician's shoulders, both of them laughing as if they shared some private joke. My mind raced as I tried to process what I was seeing. I felt a mix of disbelief and rage bubbling inside me, and I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. How could she? I confronted her that night. She was in the kitchen, washing the dishes, and I could see the steam rising from the pot. On the stove, I felt like I was on the edge of a cliff looking down into the abyss. I cleared my throat, my voice shaky, and said, "We need to talk about the party." She turned, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern. "What about it?" she asked, her tone casual, but I could see the flicker of anxiety in her eyes. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. "I saw the pictures, you and him." The words came out in a rush, and I watched her face drain of color. Her reaction was immediate. "It's not what you think," she exclaimed, her voice rising defensively. "He's just a magician. It was all in good fun." "Good fun?" I spat, my anger boiling over. "You were all over him. You looked like you were having the time of your life." She opened her mouth to protest, but the words didn't come. Instead, she looked down, and in that moment I knew. I felt a crushing weight of despair settle in my chest. The woman I had loved for years, the mother of my child, had betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. As the confrontation unfolded, I could feel the walls closing in around me. My mind raced through memories of our marriage, our wedding day, the laughter we shared, the dreams we built together. I had been so blind to the signs, so caught up in the mundane rhythms of daily life that I hadn't seen the cracks forming in our relationship. Was it the late nights at work, the distance that had grown between us? I felt like a fool, a man who had let his guard down, believing that our love was unshakable. I stood there, battling a tide of emotions, anger, sadness, betrayal. How could I have missed it? The laughter, the late-night phone calls, the sudden need for space. All the pieces fell into place, and I felt sick to my stomach. In that moment of confrontation, I realized something primal was awakening inside me. It wasn't just the betrayal I felt. It was a deep, seething rage that was beginning to take root. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just let this go. As she tried to explain herself, I found my thoughts drifting, consumed by the idea of revenge. The magician had stolen not just my wife but also a part of my dignity. I envisioned him, the smug look on his face, parading around like a hero while I sat at home, shattered. I needed to expose him, to make him feel the weight of my pain. I didn't know how yet, but I was determined to find a way. The wheels were turning in my mind, and with each passing moment, the plan began to take shape. I would make sure every parent in our community knew the truth about the man who had wormed his way into my wife's affections. After that confrontation, the air in our house felt thick and suffocating. My wife and I moved around each other like strangers in a ghost town, the weight of her betrayal hanging over us like a storm cloud. I couldn't look at her without feeling a surge of anger and hurt. Every time I caught a glimpse of her, I was reminded of the laughter she had shared with that magician, and it made my blood boil. As I lay in bed each night, staring up at the ceiling, I couldn't help but reflect on our marriage. I had always thought we were solid, built on trust and love, but now I felt like I was standing on quicksand. What had I missed? The signs were there, but I had been too comfortable to see them. Before all this, I had believed we had a good marriage. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I thought we were happy. We shared responsibilities, raised our son together, and even found time for date nights when we could squeeze them in. But now I couldn't help but replay moments in my head, searching for clues. There was that time she had come home late from work, her cheeks flushed and her eyes darting away from mine. I had dismissed it then. She was just tired. Then there were the late-night texts she insisted were from friends, always keeping her phone close, never allowing me to glimpse the screen. I had trusted her, and now that trust felt like a fool's errand. I started to feel a knot in my stomach every time I thought about what she had done. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. I wanted to scream, to shake her and demand answers, but all that came out was a heavy silence. I spent my days consumed by thoughts of revenge. The idea of that magician living his life, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in my heart, made me sick. I wanted him to know the pain he had caused. I wanted to drag him into the light and expose the truth for everyone to see. What drove me the most was the thought of my son. How could she betray not just me, but him? As I thought of his innocent face, I felt a surge of protectiveness. I couldn't let this man continue to be part of our lives, to play the role of the fun-loving entertainer, while I sat back and watched my family fall apart. I began to strategize. I envisioned posting something on social media that would make everyone aware of the magician's true nature. I could share the photos from the party, the intimate moments they had shared. I could paint the picture of a man who had crossed a line, a man who had no respect for the sanctity of marriage, but I knew I had to be careful. I didn't want to come off as the bitter husband seeking revenge. I needed to craft my message carefully to ensure it resonated with our community. After all, we lived in a small town where gossip spread like wildfire. I started jotting down notes, brainstorming how I would word my post. I wanted to strike a balance between revealing the truth and not sounding like a jilted spouse. I thought about the parents who had hired him for their children's parties, those who trusted him to entertain their kids. I could warn them, save them from the embarrassment and heartbreak I was experiencing. As I sat at my desk, I envisioned the post going viral. I imagined the shocked reactions from my friends and neighbors. Would they rally around me? Would they condemn my wife and the magician? I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. The thought of taking control of the narrative was intoxicating. I began crafting my post in my head. Hey everyone, I just wanted to share something important that happened at my son's birthday party. I wanted to lead with the experience, to draw people in. Before hitting them with the truth, I could mention how he had charmed everyone, how my wife had been swept off her feet. I knew I had to find the right words to hit the right tone. I didn't want to sound petty, but I needed to convey the gravity of the situation. After all, this was about more than just my pride. It was about protecting my family. As I sat there, the plan slowly taking shape, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the way to reclaim my power, to turn the tables on the man who had hurt me. I could be the one pulling the strings, the one who decided what happened next. With the plan for revenge taking root in my mind, I found myself oscillating between excitement and dread. The very thought of exposing the magician filled me with a sense of purpose. But I also felt the weight of the consequences looming over me, like a storm cloud ready to burst. What would happen after I hit send? Would it truly bring me satisfaction, or would it only deepen the wounds in my already fractured marriage? I took stock of my emotions. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about the betrayal that had shattered my trust. My wife had chosen this man over me, and that realization made my blood boil. I was angry not only at her but at him too. How could he take advantage of my wife's vulnerabilities? He was supposed to be a family entertainer, not a homewrecker. I began to reflect on my motivations. Was I simply seeking revenge for the sake of it, or was there a deeper need for justice? I wanted to make sure that the magician faced consequences for his actions. I thought about how my son would feel if he ever found out that his mother had betrayed his father with a children's party magician. I needed to protect him from that reality. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I was also fighting for my own dignity. I didn't want to be the man who was cheated on, the one who let it slide without standing up for himself. I needed to reclaim my narrative to show the world that I wouldn't be a doormat. As the days passed, I found myself obsessively planning the post. I would write it late at night when the house was quiet and my wife was asleep. I would sit at my computer, staring at the blinking cursor, trying to find the right words to capture my feelings. I envisioned the opening lines. I never thought I'd be sharing this, but I feel it's important for our community to know. I wanted to set the tone as serious, to ensure that people understood the gravity of the situation. I would include the photos, the damning evidence of their betrayal. But I also knew I had to be careful. I didn't want to come off as vindictive or bitter. I needed to frame it as a warning, a way to protect other families from a predator who lurked in the guise of a magician. I thought about my friends who had children, about the parents who might unknowingly hire him for their kids' parties. They deserved to know the truth. I started to draft the post in my head, imagining how it would unfold. I would describe the party, the joyous atmosphere, and how my wife had been swept up in the moment. I could mention the magician's tricks, the laughter, and then like a punchline hit them with the truth. But what you don't know is that while he was entertaining our children, he was also charming my wife. The thought of their reactions made me giddy. Would they rally around me? Would they express their outrage? I pictured the comments pouring in, people tagging each other, sharing the post, spreading the word. However, there was a nagging voice in the back of my mind, reminding me to consider the fallout. What would happen to my wife? Would she face the scrutiny of our community? What about our son? Would this affect his friendships and activities? I grappled with the idea of collateral damage, but as I weighed the consequences, the anger surged again. I couldn't let her or that magician get away with this. They needed to understand the impact of their actions. I thought about how she had betrayed not just me, but also the trust we had built as a family. One night, I finally sat down at my computer, the glow of the screen illuminating my face in the darkened room. My heart raced as I opened Facebook. I had spent days crafting the post in my mind, and now it was time to bring it to life. I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins. I typed out the opening lines, my fingers flying over the keyboard. I felt a rush of power as I poured my heart out. To all the parents in our community, I feel compelled to share a troubling experience that unfolded at my son's birthday party. As the words flowed, I felt a sense of catharsis. I was reclaiming my narrative, taking control of a situation that had turned my life upside down. I included the photos, making sure to highlight the moments that would resonate with others. With each word, I felt the weight of the betrayal lifting, replaced by a sense of determination. This was my chance to expose the truth, to ensure that no one else fell victim to the magician's charms. I hesitated for a moment, hovering over the post button. The reality of what I was about to do hit me. Would the repercussions be worth it? But then I thought of my son, of the betrayal I had suffered, and I pressed send. The moment I did, a rush of emotions washed over me, relief, anxiety, and a hint of exhilaration. I had taken a stand, and now there was no turning back. The moment I hit send, it felt like I had thrown a stone into a still pond, the ripples of my action spreading out further than I could have anticipated. I sat there, staring at the screen, watching as the post appeared on my timeline, the words stark against the white background. The photos of my wife laughing with the magician were now out there for everyone to see. My heart raced as the notifications began to pour in. At first, there was silence, just the sound of my own breathing echoing in the room. I felt a mix of anxiety and excitement, a cocktail of emotions that made my stomach churn. What had I done? I was both terrified and exhilarated. I wanted to believe I had taken control of my narrative, but doubt started to creep in. Would my friends understand? Would they stand by me, or would they judge me for airing my dirty laundry in public? Then the first notification popped up, a comment from a friend. "What, is this true?" My heart skipped a beat as I realized the storm was beginning to brew. The comment section exploded with reactions, and I felt a rush of adrenaline. People were tagging each other, sharing the post, and I could almost hear the whispers spreading through the community. "Can't believe this." Another friend chimed in, followed by a string of shocked emojis. I felt a sense of vindication. My pain was being acknowledged, and I was no longer alone in this turmoil. The comments kept rolling in, each one validating my feelings. "I always thought there was something off about him," someone wrote, and I felt a mix of satisfaction and disbelief. Had others seen the signs too? But with the validation came a wave of anxiety. What would my wife say? I could only imagine the look on her face when she saw the post. Would she confront me? Would she try to defend herself or the magician? My heart raced at the thought of the fallout. I had unleashed a whirlwind, and I was no longer in control of where it would lead. As the evening wore on, I found myself glued to my phone, watching the reactions unfold. Friends were sharing their own stories of betrayal, and I felt a strange camaraderie with them. It was as if I had opened a floodgate, allowing others to voice their own experiences of hurt and deceit. My pain was no longer solitary. It had sparked a conversation that resonated with many. But then came the messages from my wife. She texted me frantically, her words filled with disbelief and anger. "How could you do this?" she wrote. "This isn't fair." I felt a twinge of guilt, but it was quickly overshadowed by the righteousness of my cause. I had to stand firm. I couldn't let her manipulation twist my emotions. Fair, I thought bitterly. What's fair about cheating on your husband with a magician? I didn't respond right away. I needed to let the post breathe, to see how it would play out before I confronted her again. The notifications kept coming, and I felt a mix of exhilaration and dread. The community was rallying, and I could see the outrage growing. Parents were sharing stories about the magician, others expressing their disbelief that such a man could be trusted with their children. It felt good to see the tide turning in my favor. But then the unexpected happened. One of my wife's close friends commented, defending her. "This is so unfair. You're just trying to ruin her life." The comment felt like a slap in the face, and I could feel my blood boiling. I wanted to respond, to defend myself, but I knew better than to engage in a public spat. I had to stay above the fray. I took a deep breath and reminded myself of my motivations. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about protecting my family and rooting out the deception that had invaded our lives. I was standing up for myself, and I had to see it through. As the night wore on, I watched the post gain traction. Friends were sharing it beyond our immediate circle, and I knew it was only a matter of time before it reached the magician himself. The thought of him seeing the post filled me with a sense of satisfaction. I wanted him to squirm, to feel the weight of his actions. But deep down, a part of me worried about the collateral damage. What would happen to my wife? How would this affect our son? I had acted out of pain, but I was beginning to realize that every action has consequences. I felt a pang of guilt, but I quickly pushed it aside. This was about survival. I had to protect myself and my child. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, I finally decided to respond to my wife's texts. I wrote back, trying to keep my tone calm. "I had to do something. You made your choice." I hit send, my heart racing as I waited for her reply. Moments later, my phone buzzed again. "You're being cruel. Do you really think this will solve anything?" I felt a surge of anger at her words. "You think I'm being cruel? You've been unfaithful. You think this doesn't hurt me?" I wanted to scream, to unleash all the hurt I felt, but I held back. Instead, I took a deep breath, trying to center myself. I had to stay focused on my plan, on the exposure that was now unfolding. I was in too deep to back out now. The next morning, I woke up to a whirlwind of notifications. The post had gone viral overnight. Friends were tagging each other, sharing their outrage, and I felt a strange mix of triumph and dread. The magician's name was being mentioned, and I knew it was only a matter of time before he would respond. The morning after my post went viral, I woke up to an avalanche of notifications. My phone was buzzing incessantly, a symphony of alerts that felt like a chaotic soundtrack to my life. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and sat up in bed, my heart pounding as I braced myself for the fallout. The comments had exploded overnight. Friends, family, and acquaintances were weighing in, sharing their shock and outrage. "I can't believe this. How could he do that? She deserves better." The support from my community felt overwhelming, and for a moment I basked in the glow of validation. I had taken a stand, and it seemed like many were rallying behind me, united in their disdain for the magician. But beneath that surface of support lay a growing unease. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had crossed a line. I had publicly shamed my wife and exposed our family's wounds to the world. What would this mean for our relationship moving forward? What would it mean for our son, who was blissfully unaware of the chaos unfolding around him? I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I had acted in defense of my family. I had to protect my son from the man who had betrayed our trust, and I was willing to face the consequences, no matter how painful they might be. As I scrolled through the comments, I finally saw it, the magician's response. He had posted a video on his own Facebook page, and my heart sank as I clicked on it. There he was with his trademark grin, dressed in his sequined vest, trying to maintain an air of charm even in the face of the storm. "Hey everyone, I just want to set the record straight," he began, his voice dripping with feigned sincerity. He claimed that my wife and I had a rocky marriage and that he had never intended to come between us. "I'm just a magician, folks. I bring smiles to kids' faces," he said, gesturing animatedly. My stomach churned as I watched him spin a narrative that painted him as the innocent party, a victim of circumstance. I felt a surge of anger at his audacity. How dare he try to manipulate the narrative? He was the one who had crossed the line, and now he was trying to play the victim. I could feel my blood boiling as I read the comments beneath his post, where his supporters rallied around him, calling me bitter and vindictive. "Sounds like someone is just trying to ruin a good man's career," one commenter wrote. That comment struck a nerve. I had set out to protect my family, yet here I was being portrayed as the villain in someone else's story. I felt the ground shifting beneath me, the very foundation of my revenge plan beginning to crumble. I took a moment to collect my thoughts. I couldn't let his narrative overshadow my own. I had to respond, to clarify my position. I typed out a comment beneath his video, my fingers trembling with anger. "You're not innocent in this, and you know it. You took advantage of my wife's vulnerability. This isn't just about magic tricks, it's about trust." As I hit post, I felt a mix of satisfaction and dread. I was stepping back into the ring, ready to fight for my truth. But in the back of my mind, I was still grappling with the consequences of my actions. The day dragged on, and I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. My phone buzzed constantly, and I was bombarded with messages from friends, some supportive, others critical. My wife still hadn't responded to my last message, and I could only imagine the turmoil she must be feeling. As the evening approached, I finally heard from her. She called me, her voice shaky. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, my heart racing. "What's there to talk about? You've already made your choice." "Please, just hear me out," she pleaded. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a local cafe. As I drove there, I felt a mix of anger and anxiety churning in my stomach. What could she possibly say that would change anything? I had laid bare the truth, and I was prepared for her to defend herself, to make excuses. When I arrived, she was already seated at a table, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. She looked vulnerable, and for a moment I felt a pang of sympathy. But then I remembered the betrayal, the laughter she had shared with that magician, and my resolve hardened. "Why did you do it?" I asked, my voice cold. She took a deep breath, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I was feeling lost, and he made me feel alive again. I didn't think it would go this far." "Alive? You think cheating on your husband is what makes you feel alive?" I shot back, my anger flaring. "I know I messed up," she exclaimed, her voice cracking. "But it's not just about that. We haven't been okay for a long time. You were always so busy with work, and I felt ignored. I thought I could find some excitement." Her words struck a chord, but I couldn't let them sway me. "And you thought running to a magician was the answer. You could have talked to me, we could have worked through it." "I know that now," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I didn't see it then. I was so caught up in my own feelings. I felt the walls closing in around me. I had wanted revenge, but now I was faced with the reality of our situation. My desire for revenge had brought us to this moment, and I could see the pain etched on her face. "Do you even understand what you've done?" I asked, my voice low. "You've shattered our family, and now I'm the one who has to bear the burden of this. Do you have any idea how this affects our son?" She nodded, her expression filled with regret. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted it to come to this." As we sat there, the weight of the situation settled heavily between us. I had set out to ruin the magician's life, to make him feel the pain I felt. But as I looked at my wife, I realized that I was hurting her too, and in turn, I was hurting our family. I felt torn, caught between my desire for revenge and the love I still had for her. In that moment, I understood the complexities of relationships, the tangled web of emotions that often accompanies betrayal. As I sat across from my wife, the weight of our conversation pressed down on me like a heavy fog. I had come to the cafe seeking clarity, revenge, and validation, but now I was confronted with the messy reality of our relationship. The pain of betrayal was still fresh, but I could see the remorse in her eyes, and it stirred something within me, a flicker of hope perhaps, or maybe just the remnants of the love we had shared. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said quietly, feeling the vulnerability creep into my voice. "You've shattered my trust, and I don't know how to rebuild it." "I understand," she replied, her voice trembling. "But I want to try, I want to fix this. I never meant for it to go this far." I took a deep breath, wrestling with my emotions. Part of me wanted to lash out to remind her of the pain she had caused, but another part of me wanted to believe that we could work through this, that we could find a way back to each other. "Have you talked to the magician?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. She shook her head. "No, I don't want to. I know he was wrong, but I also no, I made my own choices. I just want to focus on us now." Her words hung in the air, and I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. I had wanted to ruin that man's life, to expose him for what he was, but now I was faced with the reality that my wife was willing to confront her own mistakes. "I posted that video," I said, my voice low. His response was infuriating. "He's trying to paint himself as the victim." "I know," she said, "and it's wrong. But I don't want to fight him anymore. I just want to focus on fixing our family." The tension in the air shifted, and I felt a pang of longing. The idea of us working together to heal felt so foreign yet so necessary. But could I really let go of the anger I felt toward her? Could I let go of the need to punish the magician for what he had done? "I don't know how to move forward," I admitted, my heart heavy with uncertainty. "But I don't want to keep living like this, in this cycle of anger and betrayal." "I don't either," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "I want to work on us. I'll do whatever it takes." As we sat there, I realized that revenge, while satisfying in the moment, would only prolong the pain. It would keep us stuck in this cycle of hurt and anger, and that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to reclaim my life, my happiness, and that meant finding a way to let go of the past. "I'm going to take down the post," I said finally, surprising even myself with the conviction in my voice. "I don't want to hurt you anymore. I want to focus on our family." Her eyes widened, and I could see the relief wash over her. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I replied, feeling a sense of calm settle over me. "I need to move on, and I need to do it for our son." As I pulled out my phone and navigated to my post, I felt a sense of empowerment wash over me. I was choosing to take control of my narrative, not by exposing others but by healing myself. I deleted the post, and as I did, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. In the days that followed, my wife and I began to have difficult conversations, laying bare our feelings, fears, and desires. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when the anger would bubble back to the surface, but we were committed to rebuilding our relationship. I started to see a new side of her, one that was willing to be vulnerable and honest about her mistakes. We sought counseling, determined to mend the rift that had formed between us. It was a long and arduous process, but with each conversation, we began to stitch together the pieces of our marriage. As for the magician, he faded into the background of our lives. I learned that he didn't deserve the energy I had devoted to him. I had wasted enough time on anger and revenge. It was time to focus on healing. Through this experience, I learned that betrayal doesn't just fracture relationships. It forces us to confront our vulnerabilities and the complexities of human emotions. Revenge might feel good in the moment, but true strength lies in forgiveness and the courage to move forward. In the end, I realized that love is not just about the good times. It's also about weathering the storms together. My wife and I began to rebuild our lives, one day at a time, learning to trust again and finding joy in the small moments. As I look back on that tumultuous time, I understand that revenge may have been a tempting path, but it was the road to healing and forgiveness that ultimately led me to true strength. In the end, we are all just trying to navigate the complexities of love, trust, and betrayal. And sometimes, the most powerful choice we can make is to let go of the anger and embrace the possibility of rebuilding what was once lost.